amazing pastor. And I'm not saying that he did not, no envelope drop. This is from the heart. I really love this man. I'm from Brooklyn, born and raised, right? So, when people are too nice to you, they're suspect. We shorten up and say they're sus because, what do you want from me? Do I have any old New Yorkers here that can agree with, say I got my New Yorker family over here. They understand, when somebody's too nice to you, like they want something. There's an angle, there's a pitch. And it's funny because Dan told me he loved me. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't even know me like that. And what convinced me was not the words, but the actions that followed the words. Some people say they love you, but they don't act like it. Some people will say that they're there for you, but you can never get in touch with them. Dan is a man of his word. Pastor Dan is a man who loves people, and he is a man that goes out of his way because he knows that God is using him to do certain things. And also, my wife has Pastor Dan's number because she said she was so excited. She said, yes, I got a big guy that can grab you up as well and hold you accountable. I was sitting there praying. I'm like, hey, Lord, which direction do you want me to go? And my head is swimming around. So just bear with me. But I bring you greetings from my wife for 23 years, my 5 kids. I only wanted 2, but she couldn't avoid all of this. So, some people say, Pastor Jamal, do you play sports? I said, nope. This is called intimidation. I have 3 daughters. And I like to threaten these guys, So that's my life. That's my story. I'm one of 7 boys. I'll bring you greetings from Dr. A.R. Bernard, my father, the founder of the church, CCC, Christian Culture Center up in New York. God is doing some amazing things through us. We've been doing a lot of ministry outside of the 4 walls of church, and I believe that that's what the church is called to do. And I love to hear what Cornerstone is doing outside the 4 walls. And I said this last service, I said, if your church is no longer there, will the community miss you, right? And that's where you start gauging, creating a metrics of how successful the church is. It's based on how relevant it is to its community. And that's a big, powerful thing, and I love it. And, so as I was sitting there praying, I said, Lord, which direction? And one of the questions we ask a lot of individuals, especially in the churches, do you believe what you really say you believe? Right? When it comes down to nitty-gritty, when life gets rough, when things happen, when things aren't going your way, when you say, okay, God, are you really in control? Do you believe what you really believe? Because that ultimately dictates your behavior. Out of your belief system, there goes your behavior. And too often, when we look at the world, what's going on out there in society, the Christians are not acting like they say they believe something. The Christians aren't acting like they believe that God is in control. They're not acting like we're the head and not the tail. Too many Christians are acting like the tail. It's funny because my son, my 9-year-old, his name is Liam. Liam, pray for Liam. He needs Jesus. He's that kid that you tell him not to touch something, and as he's asking, he said, "Don't touch this." I'm like, "Yes, don't touch that." He's that kid, and so he's on the school bus, and they're it's Christmas time 2 years ago, and they're just getting back into the swing of things after COVID, and he's having fun, and he's singing his Christmas song, "Mary, did you know?" I'm like, all right, son, you're baby boy, right? So he's getting into it, and one of his friends said, "Oh, why are you singing?" He said, "Because Christmas is coming. I'm excited." Right? And I'm thinking this kid has a strong theological foundation, a straight, great philosophical perspective on Christmas, right? And he's saying, Christmas is coming, I'm excited. And the kid said, why are you excited about Christmas? He said, God doesn't exist. There's another kid who said this. And he's upset, and he said, leave me alone, He said, no, I'm telling you, God doesn't exist. And he's trying, singing his song, and then he kind of felt bad, so he switched to Santa Claus is coming to town. I said, whoa, you switched that fast? You broke? He said, Daddy, the kid was bothering me. I said, so what happened? He said he went to his older brother, right? His older brother is Jamal Jr., and Jamal went and spoke to the kid and said, why are you bothering my brother? Leave my brother alone. And the kid was like, well, God doesn't exist. And so I don't understand why he's so excited about Christmas. He said, well, you don't celebrate Christmas? He said, no, we don't celebrate Christmas. He said, because God doesn't exist. And my son was like, well, God does exist. He said, no, he doesn't. He said, so what does exist? He said, I believe in science. I said, so my son was like, that's perfect. I said, you said that's perfect? So here it is. This is my son who we think, all parents, we think our kids aren't paying attention, right? So when I'm sitting back listening to him have this conversation about God, and he goes, well, you believe in science. He said, let me ask you a question. Because you believe in science, that means you believe in the Big Bang. He said, yeah, exactly. You get my point. My son said, no, I don't get your point. He said, so, because I got a question for you. He said, if there is a Big Bang, he said something had to start the Big Bang. And the kid's like, yeah, that's it. You know, you're right down my lane. He said, so let me ask you a question. What started the Big Bang? And the kid said, well, there was a chemical reaction. He said, but wait, how is there a chemical reaction if nothing existed prior to the Big Bang? And so the kid was trying to explain, and he said he was like, trying to use some scientific terms about, chemistry. And my son said, let me ask you a question. He said, I'm going to ask you just one question. He said, is it true that every Big Bang needs a Big Banger? And we call him God. And I said, you said that? He said, yes. I said, oh, snap, so you are listening. And you are listening. But the reality is his desire to defend this individual, this being that we call God, the highest conceivable being, came out of his belief about who this God was. I love it. In 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15, it says, in all areas, be prepared to give a defense for your faith. He said, but, if you continue reading, he said, keep Christ at the center. And this is Jamalism. This is not written in the Bible like this. You want to get the full version, go to 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15. He says, but, but before that, he says, keep Christ at the center of your heart. And when prompted, be prepared to give a defense for your faith. And too often, we as a church, because Christ is at the center, it's hard for us to defend him. So here's the principle. The depth of defense is determined by the depth of love. The depth of defense is determined by the depth of love. And we as Christians, there's 3 questions I believe that we have to answer as we resolve this thing called the Christian difference. The first question, what is the truth about God? What is the truth about God? Because the way we answer that will become the foundation for our belief system, and our belief system will become the foundation for the way we live out this Christian difference. The second question is, what does it mean to be human? Why is that so important? I'm glad you asked. Psalms chapter 8, the psalmist, for those theologians that are in here, the psalmist, we attribute David to writing some part, if not all, of Psalms. That's a different discussion. He says, what is man that you are mindful of him? That you set him lower than the heavenly angels. You have put us in a place of authority. He has asked that question, what does it mean to be human? What's significant about the human experience outside of all creation that God has created? And it started in the garden, because we are the only creation that God put his hands to when he was creating. So number 1, what is the truth about God? Number 2, what does it mean to be human? And number 3, what does it mean to live this Christian difference in this world today? What does it mean to live this Christian difference in this world today? What does it mean to because too often you say of the world, being in the world but not of the world, and the whole idea of this Christian, this assimilation into the American culture, whatever culture you're assimilating into, but you don't want to lose who you are as a Christian. I wrote this book called Unapologetic Christianity, Bold Living in a Chaotic World. Unapologetic Christianity, Bold Living in a Chaotic World. And part of this book, I realized, and the reason why I came out of it, is because I told people I'm not going to apologize for my Christian faith. And a part of that, I was going into schools doing an anti-bullying campaign and told them that the root of the change is not some type of policy, some type of procedure. I said a heart condition. You can't legislate the heart condition. You can't create laws that deal with the heart condition. Until you deal with the heart condition, you're going to have all of these overturning of this law and that law. And until you enter into the heart of the individual, will you have the chaos that we're living in. And they said, well, you're too loud with your Christianity. You're too loud. There's too much going on. And I said, don't shush me. I said, I'm not going to apologize for this walk because I found the answer. You got addiction? It's Christ. You're suicidal? It's Christ. You're depressed? It's Christ. I found the answer. And because there's an answer, I'm going to mess up some big business. Thank you. Somebody got it. I'm going to disrupt some big business because if Christ, it's so simple, and they said we can't monetize this thing called Christ, but I can monetize this pill. I can monetize this counsel. I can monetize all, but this thing called Christ, which is free. So I said, no, I'm not going to be quiet. Because if you found Christ, you're set free. Not just set free, but you're set free indeed. So I wrote this book, and a part of the book was about talking about living this Christian difference, walking this Christian life, because I believe that there's certain things. So back in the days, way back in the days, there was this author called Edward Gibbons, and he wrote this 5-part book, 5 books, called The Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire. And in this book, he cites 5 things that really set the tone for the Christian movement within the Roman government. No, it's the decline and fall of the Roman Empire. And these 5 things that the church did. And it was ironic because the church became the state religion, but the church was never designed to become a state religion. Once it became a state religion, it will lack the fluidity to move within the culture to change the person. God is not here he's not designed Christianity to change the culture. He's designed Christianity to change the person, and a byproduct of the culture is what's happening with the person's heart. See, once again, you go after the heart, the byproduct is change. The byproduct is transformation. So he said, and the first thing he said, he cited that the Christian church did very well to go from a sect of Judaism into its own religion was it had this thing called convictions. Not just any conviction, but convictions steeped and built on truth. Truth like Jesus is the way, the truth, and the light. Truth like in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Truth like that. Truth like love. Truth like humanitarianism. Truths. And even in America, the church used their convictions in order to set up certain aspects of the American history. There's a court case, and I said this before, there's a court case by the name, a gentleman by the name of Jonas Yoder. How many are familiar with Amish individuals? All right, thank you. So up in the north, there's a group of individuals called Amish. They still do the horse and buggy. Except for, the government made them add signals and brake lights on their horse and buggy. And it's funny, this is how old they still to this day, horse and buggy. They don't use electricity. They use the light of the day, and it's night. They have a whole big community. And in 1972, the court case was called Jonas Yoder versus Wisconsin. Jonas's daughter is become to the age where she has to go to public school. There were some things called truancy laws that that made sure that kids would go to school. I don't know if you have it out here, but your kid has to go to school. either homeschool, but you got to prove they're homeschooling. So, in New York, we would run from the truant officers. They were truant officers. I mean, I heard they used to run from truant officers. And these truant officers would grab you and say, take you to school. And they'd write you up, you get in trouble, you call your parents, and whatnot. So Jonas, in 1972, he said, no, I'm not sending my daughter to your school. Your school is corrupt. There's things that happen in your school that's antagonistic to the standards and values I raised my daughter in. And I think it'll hurt and compromise her as an individual. And the local municipalities took him to court, and he lost. And he was upset. And he said, well, Mr. Yoder, you going to send your daughter to school? He said, no, I'm not going to send my daughter to school. They said, we're going to have to throw you in jail. You violated a court order. He said, then throw me in jail. He said, well, Mr. Yoder, you're going to be fined, and you're going to get sued by the county. And he said, then sue me, fine me. I'm not going to put my kids in your school system. And Jonas Yoder took it up to the appellate court in the state of Wisconsin, and he actually won the court. But this set a precedence because the government said there has to be a way to judge, some measuring stick, some rubric of how we regulate religious beliefs and protect them. And he said you don't have to be proficient in the Bible. You don't have to be a theologian, but you have to be able to explain what you believe more than it seems to me, more than see what happened was. It has to be bigger than just, you can quote a couple of words. You have to be able to articulate why you believe what you believe. And going back to what I said, do you really believe what you believe about the Bible? And he said, well, let's put a temperature. He said, they said that the church, the Christian belief, or he said, well, religious belief falls under two categories. Under two categories. The first category was preference. The second category was convictions. And they said that preferences are decisions that are made, but given the right pressure, they're willing to change. Decisions that are beliefs that are created in an individual, but giving them the right pressure, just enough, they'll change it. They said preferences are decisions or beliefs that you make where you can negotiate out of that belief. You negotiate out that belief. They said to the point where you can go out and raise your family on this belief. You can go out and once again, I'm dating myself, go on a soapbox on the corner and proselytize based on that belief. You go to the point where you fast and you pray on that belief. He said, but given the right pressure, will it change? And they said, if so, then a preference is not protected under the Constitution of the United States. They said, but when you come to a conviction, a place where you're standing, he said a conviction is a belief that no matter what the pressure is, you won't change that decision. See, America, we got it easy. You got people in Asia and the Middle East dying because they believe that this faith walk is a conviction. You know how many Christians that are in America would be willing to change their decision given the right circumstances? Given the right pressures? You know how many Christians were willing to walk away from this? And how do I know that? Because how many Christians walked away because God didn't show up the way you wanted him to show up? How many Christians walked away because the pastor that they were admiring failed? And so, no, that Christian stuff is nonsense. Too many Christians in America prefer to be Christians, and they're not about that conviction. See, Edward Gibbons noticed that conviction was at the core of everything else they did because that was a driving factor, the why. And whenever you run into a problem, a circumstance, a situation, a hurdle, an obstacle, if you don't feed off your why, you'll be willing to quit. So he said a conviction. He said a conviction is non-negotiable. They said a conviction is something that you don't need anybody else to stand with you. You're willing to stand alone. They said if you need somebody to stand with you, then it's a preference. But if you need no one to stand, you're still standing, it's a conviction. I told this story earlier. In Daniel chapter 3, you got Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these three individuals, I don't assume that everybody got that far. Like I said before, some people haven't gotten out of Genesis, call themselves Christians, but I'm not here to judge. We learned about judging earlier. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were part of the group of individuals with Daniel that King Nebuchadnezzar put in his court for advisement and other stuff like that. And here it is. King Nebuchadnezzar was arrogant. He was about his life, about himself, thinking he was, the man and stuff like that. And some of his advisors said, you should build a statue and make everybody worship it. And so he said, yeah, that's a good idea. So I'm going to build a statue, and at the sound of all of the flutes, horns, trumpets, violins, harps, all that stuff in the Bible, he said everybody needs to worship. He said if they don't, they're going to die. Right? This is a decree. So a decree should be set up as a conviction. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego did not bow. And they haters. Everybody got haters. Say to the neighbor, say, neighbor. No, oh, you don't do your neighbors here? Oh, man. I'm about to get them to talk to their neighbor, y'all. I think I'm back in Brooklyn, we talk in our church to each other, say, neighbor. I forgot what I was going to have you say now. Oh, neighbor. Now you got to look at your neighbor. I'm not your neighbor. Your neighbor's the person next to you. Neighbor. Haters can be either fuel to your fire or water to your flame. Because everybody has haters, and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had these haters. They were hating on him. They didn't like them. And he said, well, remember the three Hebrew boys you appointed? So they were being sarcastic with King Nebuchadnezzar. They said, you appointed, didn't bow. So King Nebuchadnezzar comes over, and this is Jamalism. You can read it in Daniel chapter 3. It's in there. I think I'm pretty accurate with my story, though. I take our creative licensing. And he goes to him and he says, man, fellas, after all I've done for you, this is not in there, this is my licensing. After all I've done for you, after I set you up and, hooked you up and make sure your diet was good, make sure the clothes on your back was good, gave you time to pray, see your God, stuff like that, you're going to do this to me? He said, I'll give you one more chance. And this is why I said his decree was a preference, because he negotiated a second chance. See, when you're a person of conviction, you don't need a second chance. You don't need a second option. When you're a person of conviction, you don't need an out. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego said, hey, King Nebuchadnezzar, we don't need a second chance. We're good. King Nebuchadnezzar got mad, and he said, well, what manner of God is going to save you from this place? And this is, like I said, people get excited. They say, well, our God is able. We got a song that says he's able. Right? He's able. Oh, I can't sing. I know that. I'm a part of the scream ministry at my church, the joyful noise section. But this is where the rubber meets the road with your Christian walk. This is where the rubber meets the road. They said, our God is able. But even if he doesn't. See, we're good when he does. We're good when God does. God's showing up. Glory to God. He's moving in our lives. When he shows up, we're good when he does. But once he doesn't show up when you expect him or felt that he should show up, that's when you have a problem with him. See, but Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego say, no, we're good if he does or if he doesn't. We're in a disposition based on our conviction to still stand with our head held high. And too often, Christians allow circumstances and situations to beat them up and beat them right out of the church because they're not walking with a conviction. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego said, no, we're good. I'm good. And I'm telling you this from an experience. My brother died last year, October 3rd, 42 years old. And we're praying for God to show up in his household. We're praying for God to snatch the taste of alcohol out of his mouth. We're praying for God to move and heal him. We're praying for God to respond to the mental issues that he was using alcohol to cope with. We're praying to God, and we get the call saying your brother Jared just died. In the same exact spot my other brother died 6 years prior to. And I could have used that as an excuse to walk away. See, but a person of conviction, given the right pressure, they dig deeper into their belief system. They dig deeper into the foundation of what they believe in the God we serve. And Shadrach said, we good. King Nebuchadnezzar got mad, furious, turned up the furnace hotter 7 times. So hot that the people were throwing them in, your haters are burning off. Right? I know I'm using some slang and some language that you might not be used to, but the haters start burning off. The individuals who pray for your downfall. I got enemies, a whole lot of. And they pray for your downfall, and they're looking at you, and they want to come after you and hope that every trip you make, that it's your last. Every time every setback you have is a last. And you got individuals, and what happens is God puts you in a place because of your convictions to allow for those individuals that are hating on you to burn off. Even as you go through your furnace. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego gets thrown in the furnace, and next thing you know, they look in the furnace and say, Lord, Nebuchadnezzar, didn't we throw 3 individuals in there? We see 4. God will never allow you to be alone when you're walking in your conviction. You may feel lonely. You may feel by yourself. But I'm telling you right now, you will never be alone in the midst of your conviction. Didn't you throw 3 individuals in there? Weren't they bound up? And now we see them. And what happens? Even in your furnace, you're allowed to be free. I say it again. Maybe this side of the room get it. Even in your furnace, you'll still find yourself set free. Because God will be there with you, and they're doing a cha-cha slide, and they're doing their thing, and you're hanging out, and how low can you go, right? And so this is what's going on in the furnace, because what happens is if you're walking in a conviction, yeah, it's going to be rough. Yeah, there's going to be some times when you'll beat down, when you're weary, when you're burdened, when you can't stand. But God is there with you, and there's going to be a point where there's a switch. And even in the midst of the turmoil, even in the midst of the storm, even in the midst of the circumstance, you'll find yourself walking, not on your own energy, not on your own strength, but the strength of God. Amen. And that furnace becomes your testimony. That furnace becomes your testimony that'll lead somebody else to transformation. What do I mean by that? When they came out of it, King Nebuchadnezzar said, get them out of there, get them out of there. It's not even working anymore. All right, it wasn't working. He had no option. Get him out of there. Come on. It's not working. King Nebuchadnezzar says, look, he was astonished with the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. All because of their conviction. He said, what manner of God is this? He said, I make a decree, another decree, right? We hope that this one was better than the last one. He was negotiating. That anybody that says anything about your God, they're dead. He said, not only, I'm not going to stop there, their family is dead. But we're going because I'm astonished. This baffled me. This is amazing. I'm going to destroy their property, their livestock, dead. Everybody dead. All because of these individuals' convictions. And what do I get out of that? Because King Nebuchadnezzar never took ownership of the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He did respect them. And I'm telling you this right now, that the church needs to start living a life of conviction where people they don't have to believe in your God. They don't have to take ownership of your God, but they need to start respecting your God. They need to start looking and say, wow, okay, I'm not going to say some sly remarks. I'm not going to put certain things in movies anymore. Because remember, back in the days, don't say anything about Jesus or God. But now they're free. You don't hear them talking about Allah. But the God of the Bible, fair game now. Because the church has not lived a way that causes people to respect our God. We need to reclaim that. We need to take it back. So the first thing he cited was that the church was a church of convictions. No matter what they said and did, what they said and what they did was married and was consistent. When we finish, that was 30 minutes. I gave you like 5 different messages just now. Number 2, they believed in improvement. Where we are today, we better not be there tomorrow. Who we are as an individual, we should strive to become better. A relentless drive for progress. That's one of our timeless fundamentals at CCC. Relentless drive for progress, relentless, unyielding to mediocrity. Our best today becomes mediocrity tomorrow. I'll say it again, what we did best today becomes mediocre tomorrow because there's another best, next level. We live life on levels and then we experience them in stages. And each level that we move to, causes a deepening of our character because we're going to be responsible for more. So they believed in improvement. Number 3, humanitarianism. Edward Gibbons cited that they had great humanitarianism. So what happened was they responded to the fact that that the Roman Empire, which was, if you're familiar with the Roman Empire back then, reminds me of where America is right now. And what they did was they went after the discarded sick. They went after the discarded elderly. They went after, they were out there building porches for the elderly. They were out there representing Christ in culture unapologetically. They went out there and went after the widowed. And they said, no, look, we know that it takes a village to raise a child. We're going to do this together. Convictions, improvement, humanitarianism. Number 4, you ready for this? The church has such an influence on the environment, atmosphere, and next level of the growth of Rome because of morale. They're morals. Sorry, morals, spelled similar. Morals. They had an uncompromising moral, ethical standard. Not an objective one. I mean, not a subjective one, but an objective moral standard that came from the face of God. They didn't live back then, as some of the churches are living now. Well, your truth is your truth and my truth is my truth. We have become so subjective with some of the traditional standards of living that's steeped in biblical theology that we've lost our moral voice as the church. So they had convictions, improvement of life, humanitarianism, morals, and the last thing, when you look at the church of America today, and I got traveled, and they were like, we don't want the gospel of America. We don't want the Christian gospel of America. Y'all are failing. That's what they say in other countries, in Africa, in Asia, and in Middle East, in Europe. They say, we don't want the church of America. Y'all are failing. Look how divided you are. And what Edward Gibbons noticed is number 5, that there was a level of unity a level of unity amongst each other. Yeah, we got theological differences. Yeah, you got the Calvinists over here. You got the Arminians over here. You got the modalism in the middle. You got the Reform. You got the extreme Reform. You got all this stuff. But at what point do we sit there and say, okay, yeah, but what we do have is the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. What we do have is a broken body. What we do have is the blood that was shed. What we do have is a torn veil. What we do have is a convergence at the cross that responded to the human condition. What we do have is this individual called Jesus Christ. Why can't that be the point of unity? To unify us. Hey, you got your religious views, but you're a Christian first. Hey, you got your political views, our views, but you're a Christian first. Hey, yeah, you got your way of raising your kids, but you're a Christian first. Why can't we start at the fact of this individual called Jesus Christ, the core message of the gospel, and utilize that to unify us, to respond to the moral condition of America? See, my dad says this all the time. In the past couple of weeks, he's been saying this. He said, God is going to deal with the moral condition of the church before he deals with the moral condition of the world. We got some things we need to take care of, because I believe there's a revival coming. And it's not going to come through a mega church. It's going to come through the boots on the ground churches like Cornerstone that are there, thriving, living, has a passion and a heart for the community that it has been placed in. It's going to come from a church that says, no, we're going to stand on the back of understanding of these forefathers that they knew there was something significant about the life, death, and resurrection of Christ. They knew that there's some freeing power of this life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. There's something about the life, death, and resurrection of the Christ. If that's the place where we can all come together, then so be it. So Edward Gibbons cited all 5 of these things, and it's going to take all 5 for us to change the trajectory of the Christian movement in America. And they said if something happens in America, it ripples around the globe. If America is good, then the globe is good. So there's something significant about the Church of America. We need to get our stuff together. You know, some of the pastors, I was at a pastor's meeting, and they said, well, Pastor Jamal, what do we need to get? I said, you need to get your stuff together. Church, we need to get our stuff together. I commend you because you got your stuff together. I commend you because you got your stuff together. I pray that you got something out of this. God bless and thank you.